Hey, I'm Dawn Marie Solis with INIS 2022 Neurodiversity Conference, and I am here with Michelle Hunt, who is a nationally certified therapist and somebody who I deeply value and respect. Michelle has snark and humor and sarcasm and will tell me the truth no matter what, and I just absolutely love those qualities. Michelle specializes in the neurodivergent folks, which is so exciting, and also eating disorders, which are a pretty standard companion for a lot of us who are neurodivergent. So, Michelle, thank you so much. Sorry, we are all, we do not mean to have an inside joke. We are laughing because Michelle and I are awkward. And our awkwardness is going to show while we record, which is like, okay, I look at the camera, but I can't look at the camera and think, right? I'm always like, yeah. And I can't, right? It's the eye contact thing. So even though there's like nobody here to make direct eye contact, it's like camera or not, right? So I'm always like somewhere, yeah, the awkwardness is showing today.
The look when it's like you're talking, not when someone else is.
Yeah. So you said, I said, Michelle, what's your title? And you said a bunch of letters, and I went, oh, yeah, I'm not saying that stuff. So can you say that stuff?
Yes. So okay. I'm at LMHC, which is a licensed mental health counselor, and then an NCC, which is the nationally certified counselor. So both of those within the state of New York.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
And then I think you said some letters that had something to do with the eating disorder stuff.
Yes. So the neurodivergence and eating disorders, I mostly specialize in ARFID, which is avoidant and restricted food intake disorder, which is very much tied into the sensory processing, interoception, proprioception, and just our experience of our bodies, which is vastly different than neurotypical.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Interoception. Okay. This is like a new special interest of mine, right? Because I learned about it recently and I went, because I can't swallow some stuff because I can feel it, right? Like my body's like, that is a texture that I will not allow below the mouth. Right? Like if you insist on holding it in your mouth, that is your problem. But my body has decided it will not go further. And you see this in like little kids that like gag reflex, right? I'm 53 years old, and if you feed me squash, turnip, anything that is the consistency of baby food, like I like applesauce, but it cannot be the smooth kind. My body will not swallow it. Which causes problems because if you try to swallow things that your body doesn't want, your body will give it back.
With a vengeance, yeah.
So these things that if you don't know your identity, or even if you do, but you don't know this stuff, you think like, I don't know how to put this. Like, you don't know what's wrong with you, right? There's not like, I don't think of it as something actually wrong with somebody. I don't like that language, but I don't like have good language instead of, right? Like, why can't I swallow food that tastes good?
Before you even have the language, it is what's wrong with me. And I'm different and all these other things. So then when you are out to eat and other people are, eating food and you're looking at their plate thinking, how? Like me with shrimp, I just see people eating shrimp, and I'm like, oh God, how do you put that in like your face? Like, how do you put that? I don't understand. And it is a fascinating experience because you're just like, I don't want to sit at a table with you right now because that's making me uncomfortable. I can picture it or like feel it in my mouth.
Right. Like I have learned recently, the more I understand about the neurodivergent brain, especially as it comes to autism, the more I realize I have said I liked things that I don't like.
Yeah.
My idea of liking a thing is I can chew it and swallow it, and nothing bad has happened.
Yes.
So like I've been trying to like analyze, are there foods I actually like really enjoy? And there are a few, but there are very few.
Yeah.
Most food lives in the world of I can chew and swallow fairly successfully. But I've been learning about hypermobility. That's a whole world, right? And I've been, because I'm hypermobile, and this is something that is new information to me. And I've been learning about like the issues with your jaw when you're hypermobile and stuff like that, and that all of that is connected. And sometimes you can't swallow stuff because of hypermobility. I now know why I can't, like, food stops at the base of my throat. I'm like, do I not have the proper muscles to push it to the stomach? Like, what? Like, what? Like, I have to take like iron, and because I'm persistently anemic, and like I have to take all this stupid stuff. And the pills sit right about here. They don't even make it to here. They sit right about here, and then like burn a hole in my throat. And like it's like and then I taste it, right? Because it comes like, right? If I tell people who don't understand what it is to live 5 minutes of my life, they're like, you need a padded cell where nothing can hurt you and you can't hurt yourself. I'm like, I've considered that as an option for life.
For some reason, that's just not offered. I mean, I don't really understand, but I feel like absolutely all walls of my apartment should be padded. I have no idea. I bruise myself consistently running to the same wall I've walked past successfully multiple times.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
I tell people if there's a doorway, I have to aim.
Yes.
Careful analysis, or I have to put my hands on the jamb, right? I have to the frame, and then I can like.
And that's still not a total, like, you're not going to harm yourself in some capacity.
No.
It lowers the risk of bruising.
And I'm since March, like I don't know if I've mentioned this in other videos, but like I got hit by a car in March, right? And I didn't know my hypermobility. I didn't understand proprioception at the time. I don't know, I was kind of clumsy or whatever. I drop stuff all the time, but I got hit by the car and it all got worse. It all got worse in this like spectacular way. And none of the doctors can figure it out because they don't understand the world of neurodivergence, right? They don't understand the co-occurring challenges of a lot of autistic people. So I'm having to go like do my own research and stuff like that. And I bring the information back to the physicians and they just look at me like I'm nuts. But understanding all of these things put together means I get to figure out at least how to help myself, even if I don't have medical community with me right now that can help me. And I'm seeking. So if you know anybody in the medical world, send them to me. In this country, there are many, like England, Australia. Some of them are talking at the conference, right? They are out there, but I need to know them here. But that's part of what I find brilliant about the way you think, Michelle. You seem to be able to grab the bits and pieces and put things together in a way that is respectful and validating and helpful for a community that doesn't find that out there in the world. So did you choose therapy before or after you knew your neurodivergent identity?
Before.
Before.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Just naturally drawn. I must help all the lost souls, right?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, okay, I'm broken, so I'm going to go study why people are broken so that I can not only figure out why I'm broken, but also help other people figure out why they're broken. Which again, like wording and all of that was very different prior to understanding. And I actually wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until a couple of years ago. And I actually had a client tell me that they thought that I was autistic. And I was like, no. So then I talked to him. I was like, I really didn't have a grasp of autism at that point. It's like it all was explained by ADHD. So I talked to my providers. They're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I need help. You have to explain that to me. Like, what? So learning about that and kind of just my own grieving process of not being diagnosed younger, and I think a lot of my educational issues and concerns, and I had a really hard time learning to read. I don't memorize things very well, which now I can understand a lot better. It just, yeah, a lot of things would have been easier, like not understanding how to relate to people wondering why I'm so serious all the time. And I'm like, but I'm not. I find things funny. Like I don't laugh like out loud all the time, but inside I might be like cackling and not able to breathe. I don't know how to explain that to people without, yeah. So I accidentally found neurodivergence through this one client, and then kind of just took off from there and learned about my own stuff, learned about ARFID, and kind of explained a lot of my own food related things and interoception. And I was like, so people don't feel food in their organs. And then I learned people don't feel their organs. And then that was mind boggling, because I was like, I can feel my muscles contracting. Like I can physically feel food being processed from the second it touches my mouth until I go to the bathroom. I feel everything. And honestly, it's more shocking learning what people don't experience as neurotypicals than it is being able to relate to clients and peers in the field. Like it's kind of wild.
Yeah. I've like trying to explain to a doctor, no, I feel that. No, you can't. There aren't any nerves there. I don't know what to tell you. I feel it. Like one of the things I learned about hypermobility is that your organs can move around. Evidently, that's not normal. Except my organs move around. And this one I have proof of, because back when I used to have a uterus, they would take a sonogram photo and it would be one place, and then they'd take it again and like, your uterus is like slipped behind your other organs and we have to like pull out the large wrecking equipment to find it. Like that I have proof of. So at least my uterus played hide and seek. But I have always, and I've told people, like, I feel like depending on the day, my stomach is in really different places in my body. And I feel like my intestines twist and untwist, and, and they just tell me that I'm nuts, really. They're constantly trying to send me for psychiatric evaluation, which I'm not saying I don't need, but not because of that, right? Like, it's a totally separate issue. So to find out that there were other people like me, I'm sad that people go through this stuff, but I'm so happy I'm not the only one.
Well, and I think too, like if you've been told your whole life that you're making something up because people can't find it, and then you find something that shows like, so I wasn't making that up. Like that's even more validating than anything else that exists. I was trying to explain to somebody why I firmly believe that anyone who is neurodivergent should only see neurodivergent clinicians. And they were telling me I was wrong. And I was like, first of all, I'm not. And second of all, you're neurotypical. So I actually just proved my point. So we don't need to continue. But it is really hard because it's one of those things where, I watch a lot of my autistic clients have difficulties communicating with me. And that's simply because there's such a variation within the autistic community. And so where I might be more blunt and not take more of an emotional approach, a client might need more of the emotional approach. And where I then might take the emotional approach the next time, they're like, no, I need the blunt approach. And it's like, oh no, I can't keep up. I don't have the rule. Like, I don't understand. What am I supposed to do right now? And it is hard. Like even, being autistic, communicating with autistic, like it's hard. And so I can't imagine a neurotypical trying to navigate that without recommending further psychiatric referrals and care of like, this person has multiple personalities basically, or like this person is borderline, and you know, all these other diagnoses are thrown around, and it's like, no, I'm just neurodivergent, and my body changes and my experience of my surrounding changes, and it's hard to keep up myself, so I don't really know how anybody else does. Yeah, it's hard, and so I'm very firm in my belief that because of everything that you described, like I really think anyone who's neurodivergent should see neurodivergent providers.
I am in complete agreement with that. The organization Autistic Doctors International, which began in the UK, is now a multi-nation 500 plus member organization that's doing brilliant research right now. Designed, led, followed through on by neurodivergent people, which is shocking and unfortunately rare in the world. A lot of our research about autism, ADHD, et cetera, is being done by people who do not have that lived experience. And so they're theorizing and concluding from a standpoint of ignorance, which is really disappointing because their results aren't good. But that's most of what we have. So, you know, I have a little bit of like heroizing going on with this organization because I really love their purpose and their point. So I reached out to them on Twitter because I had a client say, you know, is there a list of autistic care providers out there? Like, oh, I think I know people who would know if there was. And so I tweeted at them, and you know, one of the main researchers got back to me and said, not that we're aware of, mostly because even if they're part of our organization, they're not out at work. And I think this is one of the things that we are struggling hard with right now, is that because there's such a terrible misunderstanding of what it means to be autistic, it is not personally or professionally safe to tell people I'm autistic, I'm ADHD, I'm whatever, and have people trust you can do your job. I mean, I hope you're out at work because you are now.
Very proudly. It is very.
Was that an experience that you felt safe going through? Was it, if you can't talk about it, that's fine.
I'll say the first time, no. The current company, I pretty much, I mean, I was out before I even got there because I shared a client with somebody who worked at the company. So I pretty much transferred to that company. Just, yeah, they knew that I was neurodivergent. Yeah. And what's really cool is that they're asking me for, you know, trainings and feedback. People come to me and ask about like different things related to ADHD because there's quite a few ADHD clients at that company. And am I allowed to say the company? Is that
you are, as far as I'm concerned. It would be up to them if,
sure,
right, if they're going to get grumpy.
We'll find out. It's Empower Your Mind Therapy based out of New York City.
Yeah, it's cool. Hopefully they like their now connectedness to NS 2022.
Sorry if not. No,
I'm not asking for money, so it should be okay. I think that therapy may be a world where it's minutely easier to be out. But then again, I don't know. And I know, like, so Autistic Doctors International has recently, in the past couple of years, started Autistic Medical Students International, right? Because if you become an autistic doctor, you were an autistic medical student, right? And you need support. but I don't think medical students feel able to suggest any struggle, any thought that something should be done differently. And that may be bias on my part. That might be invented. Yeah. But I think when you are trying, I would think that there are architects who feel that way. I mean, I've known a number of architectural students and their belief that they cannot do what architecture students have done for the last 50, 60 years, which is never sleep, never eat, never have a social, never do anything but build tiny paper versions of the dreams they have in their head, right? To scale. I could not do that. No. No.
I can't draw stick figures, so I'm very I would not be able to.
I'm a very creative person, but in a very specific way, right? Somebody was showing me like some charts that they had made, and like it's just a chart. I couldn't do it, right? Like, wow, you thought to put like colors to your information. And I'm like in awe, right? Because it's not where my creativity is.
I have a coworker who is also neurodivergent, and she's really good at making spreadsheets appealing to the eye. And when you open anything that I've made, it is just the most basic thing. Sometimes I'll make the font bigger if I think that it's more of a title. And so then I'll just write her and I'll be like, can you fix my spreadsheet? I don't think anyone will enjoy looking at this or find anything appealing about it. She's like, I got you. I'll do it. I was like, thank you. Because I can't. I look at it and then I just look at a color and I'm like, sure, that's a color that can go there, and then none of them match. And then I just don't know what I'm doing.
Right. And I have visual processing and sensory challenges. So like I resist putting color to things because now it's harder for me to look at. And it was hard for me to look at to begin with. Dyslexic, dyscalculic, right? Like the spreadsheet, my head hurts. Like you just say the word spreadsheet and I want to like throw up. Please don't ask me to look at a spreadsheet. Please don't do it. And it's really funny because in my work, I have to have them. Like I have to track stuff, and that's how you track stuff. So, but yeah, no, it's either bold or not bold. It's not even different font size. I'm dyslexic, right? I can't mess with that stuff. It all has to look the same, right? Like, so I can appreciate the pretty stuff, but I can't look at it.
That is like the finalized when it's going to other people. So if I'm playing with it and trying to fill it in and like figure it out, I'm like, there's nothing, no distractions. We're looking at words. That is where they are. Past that, do whatever you need to do so that other people will find it visually appealing. But like for me to look at, I get distracted. And then I'm like, do I really want that color? And then I'll sit there for like 30 minutes trying to figure out what colors I would actually want instead. And then the whole work that I was doing, it's gone. My afternoon shot after that. There's no coming back.
You're in like the little color wheel with the gradient slide. No, right?
My calendar, it's embarrassing the amount of time I spent choosing the colors to make sure that I understood what each color meant. And then I realized that the one was slightly off. So then that was another like 3 hours of trying to change all the colors then, because if it wasn't going to be perfect, then why would I have a color scheme to my calendar? Colors and we have to spend a lot of time together. It's not fun.
Yeah. I totally relate to that. I'm starting to stim. I'm starting to like, just scratch stuff. That's one of my stims. Conversations with stim. I'm going to play with my ball. So yeah, we had this, so for people out there who might be watching this, Michelle and I had this brief conversation before we started, like, oh, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, it's all valid. It's all real, because if we don't show up as our human being selves with our need to spend 3 hours on a color in a spreadsheet, the other people out there who need to spend 7 hours on a color on their spreadsheet don't know that, oh, I mean, yeah, I spend 7, but they spend 3. Like, they're a little bit like, right? Like I said before, finding out that there were people who also can't swallow their food and who can't tolerate certain textures. And yes, I can too see these cycles on the fluorescent light, and it does give me a migraine every single time. Yes, I wear darker than usual glasses all the time because light hurts, but I can't see without light. Right? Like, if we don't show up as ourselves, people don't know we exist.
Yeah.
And then the only thing we're trying to process in terms of the wider world is the quote, and I don't like this language. I need better language, but kind of the extremes, which is really necessary. It's really important that the world be a kinder, gentler place for people who have it harder than me. But if they don't know I exist, if I'm like putting on the mask and going out there in the world and sitting through those meetings and those parties and those restaurants and those bars, and I'm doing all the things, and I'm not telling people that I needed a week and a half of nap afterwards.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I'm not a functioning human. I just function differently.
I think too that, we talked about this before, how being autistic, having ADHD, like that in itself is not a disability, but it's existing in a world that expects you to behave a certain way and do a certain thing based on capitalism that is disabling. And so we just internalize all that. And then there's self-hatred, right? The exceedingly high suicide rate, specifically in autistic women, right? The self-harm, and it's just all increased because if you can't function the way that you're told you have to function, you're just kind of sitting there like, okay, so I'm going to not sleep for 4 days because that's how much time I need to do the same as other people do in 4 days. So I'm going to go slowly kill myself in order to make it through, XYZ. School was really hard. I mean, I struggled really hard through a majority of my education. I still don't know how I got to where I am or passed the test to get to where I am. That's still a shock. I passed my licensing exam by 1 question. And I had somebody who was just like, oh, wow, that was really close. I was like, I passed. I don't know what you're talking about. That was really close. I passed. I'm good. All I knew the second I was leaving was I never had to take that again. So I'm good. That is passing.
Yeah, I have avoided education beyond a certain point because they will want me to take tests. And I don't I can, I don't know. I can. Sounds obnoxious, but I can. I can like wow people with my intellect, right? Like, oh, you're really smart. And I can't pass a test, right? There's a certain point where all sorts of things kick in for me. The time restrictions, I read much slower than the average person. I can get lost in thought and all of a sudden the test is over.
Tantrums were my worst nightmare because not filling it in perfectly set me into a frenzy every single time. So then I'd have to erase it, refill it in, and then the line's missing. So then I have to like decide where that line. It was a whole thing. Scantrons and I did not go on.
Yeah. No. I was so terrified of my little like pencil mark went outside the bubble.
Yes.
Like, ooh, will they know what that is? And do I erase it? And, you know, what happens if you erase it too much? And yeah, and now I'm stuck because of bubble. Yeah. Yeah. No. Somehow the education that I have gotten, in general, I've been able to talk just about every professor into a workaround. And this is before professors sort of knew that there might be students who need other options in order to share what they actually do now. I had a professor that gave the most obtuse tests. Like I don't know how anybody passed those tests. They weren't relevant to anything. And I just found them irritating. And my sweet little autistic and ADHD brain went, anything that we find that irritating, we refuse to do. just not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. Can't. So I said, can I please write papers? Because I can write papers in my sleep. Right? Like it just comes out of me. And he's like, okay, fine. And he told me I couldn't write a paper for the final exam. So I did the final exam and I brought a paper. Just in case. Right? And gratefully today, the world of education is starting to finally understand. And you don't have to be autistic to think differently. People learn differently. They learn audibly, they learn visually, they learn tactily, they learn a combination, they learn, you know, hanging upside down, they learn running around their desk, right? We learn and process differently. And we're still in a turn of the 20th century education model designed by people who didn't actually want you smart enough to own the company.
Absolutely.
And that's a legitimate history for any of you who want to go look that up. That's legit. Our public education system was designed by powerful, rich people who only wanted a particular version of human so that they could maintain the wealth. And we're still using that system at every level and calling it adequate. And so there are people like you and me who see the world differently, who process the world differently, and we don't fit into those systems. And it's not always seen that we're not fitting. My grades didn't indicate that I didn't fit because I would kill myself to produce the work.
I think a lot of the education system is based in this like idea that you're going to go sit in a desk calmly, quietly, without any need to get up and, I don't know, go to the bathroom 16 times in one class because you just have to get away from people. Or, you know, if there's a movie played in the class, nobody asks, like, is anybody sensitive to that sound level? There's a lot of different things that just aren't considered when it's sensory processing involved. And I know for me, like whenever they played videos in class, I would just go to sleep and I would figure out a way to like cover my ears and cover my eyes and go to sleep because it was too much and I didn't want to be there. So, okay, I'll go escape into a nap. That's fine. And then we failed the test and they're like, oh, it's because, you know, she's lazy. She's just sleeping in class. And I'm like, well, first of all, I was tired. So maybe I was listening to my body. Second of all, I wasn't going to process anything anyways. And instead I was probably just going to end up freaking out. So I think you should all be grateful that I chose to nap.
Yeah. I started off as a middle school English teacher. That was the beginning of my adult professional life. I had had a very detailed conversation with the universe about who I was willing to teach and who I was not willing to teach. And so the universe said, fine, you may only find work with students you have refused to teach. And then I fell in love with middle schoolers because they're horrible human beings.
Absolutely.
And I love them for it. I absolutely love them for it. And I think that age group of people need teachers that love how horrible they are. Because they're this wonderful combination of pushing back on the entire world while not quite old enough to believe their own BS. Right? You get to be about 16 years old and you're now starting to believe your own bull, right? Which I love them too. But I loved them. And in my classroom, because I was a multiple modality teacher, you didn't have to sit. You didn't have to sit in your desk. You didn't have to line your desk up. You didn't have to. Watching my students come in, and the classroom was always set up by the maintenance staff, very neat and tidy, you know, and I'm grateful to the maintenance staff that they didn't hang me because they came in every night and retidied my room. But they would come in on the first day and they'd all sit in their desks, and I'd ask them, do you enjoy the way the classroom is set up? And, you know, they're fresh first day, so they don't know me. And they just stare at me. I'm like, no, really? Like, the lines are making me nuts. Like, I can't see some of you, and I don't want to sit in my chair behind my desk, which is why I'm sitting on top of my desk. And there'd always be like some student who was always going to try to push my buttons anyways, and will like do some wild thing with their desk, right? They like take it over the corner and face the corner and be like, hey, if you can concentrate over there and you're good, have at it. And they like,
that would have been me. Just, yeah. 100%.
and I would get questioned by other people in the school, like, how is this student doing so well with you? How is this student doing? Right? I'm like, because I don't ask them to be the prototype model 1893 student. I ask them to be themselves. And when they embrace being themselves, some of the impediments to learning go away. And I think that is part of what I was hoping you and I could talk about in terms of the therapy world.
It's a huge parallel.
Yeah. Took me a while to get there. But I was on a specific path. I have a lot of my own thoughts on quote unquote the standard therapy model, whether it be talk therapy, etc., in part through my experience of therapy making me worse until I understood why. Not all neurodivergent people are like me, but my version is, if I'm recalling a memory, I'm recalling it in a way that's very PTSD-like. It's as if it's happening now. And I like come inside myself and I kind of exist in that memory space. So not only will I feel emotions about the memory, I will feel the emotions in the moment. And then all of that will be informed by all of my other memories. I don't just pick one. I live many, many all at the same time. So if you want me to talk to you about that, it has to happen in a type of organic way that is indirect. I have to choose it. Like, I really need to drive the bus of my therapy. And I went to therapist after therapist who would get either so sad for the hardness of my life. And I appreciate that. That's very sweet. But I'm too empathetic. And now I feel like I have to help my therapist. And I can no longer tell them more because I feel like I'm hurting them. Right? Or I have the other end where they're mad at me. They're mad at me for my situational mutism. You ask me a question, I might lose my ability to have words. I'm not being difficult. I have no words.
I actually had the first time where, so I have been having my own medical stuff going on, and because of my increase in like interoception, my selective mutism is up. And it happens periodically with clients where if they say something and if I'm in pain or something else is happening, I can't. It's not going to happen, and it's really hard. So I think that even on the other, in the other chair, it doesn't necessarily get any like easier to navigate in that, which is again why I think that having neurodivergent clients, you should probably be neurodivergent to navigate mutism in a session. I have had clients write notes and hold it up for what they would like to say, or type it out in like whatever chat, and send it so that I can reply while they type. There's a lot of different ways to navigate that traditional education and neurotypical mindset just really, how would you know to do that? And how would you know if like you are neurodivergent and as a therapist being unable to speak or unable to state like I need like 5 minutes, that's hard to navigate as well. So for me, not having neurotypical clients makes that easier because I can just stare, and then my client's like, okay, right? And it's like, thank you, I will be right back, just give me a couple minutes, I'll come back. And it is hard. But I think the biggest part is I show up authentically, and I will say if I'm having a bad executive functioning day, I will admit if I say something insensitive. I will own my own stuff. It may not be in the moment. Maybe I need to go sit in a corner for 4 hours afterwards and cry and lick my own wounds and come back and be like, yep, that was wrong. You are correct. And sometimes it might be the opposite, where something is said to me and I'm just like, okay, that fell out of line, right? And it's like, all right, my rejection sensitivity just went to 1,000. I'm going to go not react, or maybe I might react a little and then be like, it's okay to react. You're allowed to react, right? And like kind of modeling. I'm trying to figure it out too. I don't really know what it looks like in therapy because nobody taught me. Nobody knows. Like I feel like sometimes just, I don't know, drowning in a sea and not really understanding anything that's happening around me. I like rules. I like structure. And this is the exact opposite. There are no rules. There's zero structure.
Yeah, I relate to so much of that. I'm the opposite in the rule category. Rules terrify me because I'm always breaking them and I didn't realize they were rules. So even the rules I do know.
Let me rephrase a different word then, because maybe it's not rules. I like structure. I like to understand like there's a beginning, middle, end. There is this, and this. Like you're going to follow this kind of path.
Yes.
So for me, there is no path right now with neurodivergent providers treating neurodivergent clients. We're all just kind of flailing and just kind of trying to figure it out as we go. I will say I find it one of the coolest things is when I finally see a client unmask. That's something that I don't think I'll ever take for granted, because that's amazing. I stim with all my clients. I nod a lot. I will kind of, make sounds with my hands and do all sorts of things. And so then when I see my clients start to stim, I'm just like, oh yeah, like do it. Like, this is cool. I get excited. And hearing different ways of saying things, or being, a client telling me, you hurt my feelings, I'm just like, oh my God, cool. How? Right? Like, that is so cool. But then I have to like calm down because I'm like, right, I did that. Right. Okay. What did I do? Right. Like, it's a very interesting experience.
Yeah. When you were talking about, I think we did this after we were recording. Our pre-recording and after recording is blurring a little bit. I think we talked about swallowing here, where you were talking about like somebody chewing shrimp or something like that. And you're like, how do you do that? my inner self desperately wants to go to that other restaurant table and sit down and be like, can I watch you eat that? I think it's really disgusting, and I'm amazed you can do it. Right?
I don't understand how people can touch like velour and microfiber. I find it disgusting. I don't want it anywhere near me. I will pick up stuff that's like my roommates, and I just have to hold it up with 2 fingers and like drop it to the side where I'm like, it was gonna touch me, and I didn't want it to, right? Then I'm so curious how other people touch it. Like, what is their experience of it? And normally I'm just told it's really soft. I'm like, but that's not soft to me. That's gross. Like that's a no-no texture. That's it's not allowed in my space. But that's not soft. Like your definition of soft is wrong. That's not soft. And it's I feel that way with some foods as well, where I see people eating different foods like shrimp. It's my usual example of that. And I'm just like, I don't think your taste buds are right. Like I've been told mine are wrong, but I feel like mine are right, and I feel like yours are wrong, right? Like I don't understand what's happening. And that's just it's fascinating. Again, even within neurodivergence, the different kind of sensory processing. For me, auditory processing, sometimes my clients will be talking, and if I hear anything in the background of their side of the screen or anything outside, I'm just like, ooh, nope, I got nothing for the past 2 minutes, and we're gonna have to rewind and start back because nope. It sounded like the parents in the Peanuts comics, and I have zero recognition of what just happened.
Yeah, or like somebody will say a thing which takes my ADHD brain off into like, it's really fun where my brain goes, but I wasn't supposed to leave the room mentally, and I'll have to be like, I'm sorry. I was having a lot of really fun thoughts, but none of them were about what you were saying. Could you try again, please? And I'm always really grateful for the people who don't get mad at me for that. They're just like, oh yeah, I think I can back up. I mean, some people I think that's very hard for because they can't remember what they were saying. They don't log what's coming out of their face. Yeah. They're processing. So I have some theories about that, but like their processing doesn't allow them to keep the words in their memory. So no, they can't. So the fact that I wandered away from them mentally is deeply frustrating because they don't know if what they just said was really important. Yeah. And that's real. That's real, and that's sad. Like,
yeah, damn. I told you when you asked to record me that I don't watch recordings of myself because I don't remember what I said. And I don't always want to. And I go back sometimes and I watch it and I'm like, and then I have to like turn it off and run away because I'm like, why did I say that? I don't remember. It is hard. And I also think that it's kind of when you're at capacity. So I know for me, like we talked about this, I get very anxious being on recordings. And so my brain is so focused on like, okay, Michelle, you are here for a reason. You are speaking about XYZ. And I have to have like that repeated in my head. So when I'm actually speaking, I could be so excited about it and have zero recollection of it. Like, I'm not going to lie, right now I've been thinking about chicken nuggets the whole time we've been talking because of our conversation before this.
Let's get it right. Dino Nuggies.
Oh, absolutely. The Dino Nuggies.
The Dino Nuggies are waiting for you in the other room, and I don't know how you're even focusing. No. If food is waiting for me, my brain is like, but the food.
Yeah.
Because I'm really temperature, like my food has to be at the right temperature. Yeah. If it's supposed to be cold, it must be cold. If it's supposed to be hot, it has to be like burn me hot so that I have to blow on. Why? I've been working on myself with that, right? Like, it's okay, Dawn Marie. You don't want to actually put it in your mouth when it's that hot. When it gets into your mouth, it's not that hot anymore. It's okay if your food is not that hot. My brain's like, no, because if it starts off not that hot, by the time I get to my last bites, it's going to be gross and cold. It has to start off that.
It's true though. What I was telling you, like when I have the Dino Nuggies, They have to be slightly burned because that's the texture that I learned that I like. So when they're not that way, I will panic. It's like, you're playing a game and you like flip it off the table because you're going to lose. Like that's how I feel inside when they're not exactly burned in the way I want them burned. I'm just like, well, the whole day's ruined. Like the day's over. I will restart tomorrow and see if that's a better day for food. It's a fascinating experience.
Okay. You're the perfect person to have this conversation with. First world problems. These are the things I think about. If it's this hard for me to be white in America and have a reasonable income, what I'm doing with my face.
Like shoving
the autism is coming out. Like I'm thinking about how hard it is for other people. I have to push my face. Like, what if you live in a country where like corrugated steel slightly leaning together is your home and it's 90 degrees with the sun on it and you all use the same hole down the road for like, because you're autistic there just as much as you're autistic here. Like, do you just give up? Like, I have no idea how hard it is to be. But then I wonder if because we think of ourselves as not adaptable, except that we are. In some ways, I feel like as much as we appear inflexible, we are the most adaptable because all of these things feel so hard and we do them. So maybe your autistic brain just adapts in a different way to because maybe you don't know a different environment. So, but it's still got to be like crazy hard.
Well, if you think about it, so us pre-diagnosis, right? We're like out in the world doing our thing, just thinking we're weird and doing things the way neurotypical people do it. We made it happen. So I think that if you're in a third world country or not having the same like SES that we have or various privileges, I think it kind of comes down to that where you learn to mask before you know that you're masking, and you figure out a way to survive. Like we really do.
I hope so. I mean, I have a tendency to extreme morbidity, so I'm constantly thinking about the way people die.
Common.
Yeah.
Time
to
have that conversation at the last.
So I'm always like, do they just all die by the time they're like, it's terrible, it's horrible, and you're not really supposed to say those things out loud, except maybe we need to say those things out loud so we can figure it out. Is anybody paying attention? Is anybody paying attention of failure to thrive, and I have like savior problems, right? I used to work for an organization that would regularly go to countries in other places that weren't as financially well off as the US, and they wouldn't bring me because they were sure I would bring home at least 7 children a trip. Right? Like, it's okay, honey. You'll fit in the suitcase. I'll hide you under my coat. Right? Like, I wouldn't survive because I'd go and I'd have to figure out what to do about it.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn that about myself. And
so take a step back from that, though. If you look at why that exists, if you put an autistic person in front of a puzzle, we will do absolutely everything in our power to solve that puzzle. We will not eat, sleep, anything until that is solved. So if you put somebody who has heightened empathy, contrary to popular opinion, who in your personal experience really loves working with kids, that's not my personal experience, but there's people out there. Mine would be animals. I would bring home all animals. And you're going somewhere and you're seeing that they're in pain. Yeah, you're going to want to fit as many as you can into your suitcase to bring them home and make sure that they're okay. Like it just logically makes sense that here's a problem. I can take a couple children. So why don't I just bring them home?
Yeah, except I can't. I'm not good at it, right? It like, but I don't know how to leave them there, right? Like this is the constant conundrum. I have a joking working title for my next book, which is I Love My Kids, I Hate Being a Parent. It may actually stay that title because the people who understand what I mean love that title.
I think it can be taken wrong, but I do love the title. Yes.
Oh yeah, it can be taken totally wrong.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring out what I mean by it. Because part of what I'm learning so profoundly about neurodivergence is what is hard for us does not always have to be. That it is cultural, institutional, impositions of ideologies, beliefs, ways of doing things that make things hard so much of the time, which is why you were saying, you know, if I go selectively mute because my brain broke because somebody said a thing, or I heard the guy mowing the lawn outside or whatever, right? Your neurodivergent client is more likely to appreciate that experience because they have it sometimes too, and wait for you, right?
Yeah.
Not always.
Very circumstantial. Yes.
Right. Not all, because some people are like, we're gonna be done and you won't accept your thing, right? So not always, but even for people who have that need to stick to the rigid schedule and the plan and all of those things, will still have the ability to recognize, even if they can't tolerate somebody else's need, they can recognize it, right? Okay, right, that's you. I don't like that you're doing you right now. You're doing you near me, and that's hard. And I wish you would go do you somewhere else. My body language will let you know that I feel that way sometimes. Right? Sometimes we feel that way, but most of us, if we have the capacity to understand another person at all, we can still live in the I don't like it, and you really have to take who you are far, far away from me. But I don't need you to be different than you are. You just can't be you near me. Right? Where I think the way we were raised was, it's not that you can go do you, you can't go do you. And if you have like the parent who desperately wants your success but believes you can't be you, they're going to try to save you from being you. They're going to try to love the you out of you so hard, right? We're not just talking about like parents who shouldn't be in charge of other human beings ever, right? And those exist, but I think a lot of parents who have neurodivergent children, whether they know they're neurodivergent or not, are trying so hard to help their child survive.
Yes and no. So I will say I no longer work with adolescents for a reason, and it's not the adolescents, it is the parents. The amount of times I was told to fix their child, and I would start working with their child, and then all of a sudden their child is stimming more and, you know, being more ADHD or being more autistic. And the parents would be like, but we brought you our child to fix them. And I was like, so first of all, maybe we have different definitions of fix. What I heard was, my child's suffering. I don't want them to suffer anymore. Can you help them figure out who they are and love themselves? To me, that is fixing the problem of your child presenting with severe depression and suicidality. Just not, you know, my basic understanding. Who am I? But and theirs was make my child normal, but not want to kill themselves. And it's like, I maybe when I'm older and more patient and can handle that, I will. But right now, I'm still too fiery, and parents just do not appreciate my bluntness and my honesty when I tell them that they are basically putting their child in the ground.
Yeah, I don't work with young people if the parents are unwilling to do the work.
I
First.
some willing parents. I mean, I think that some are, well-intentioned and wanting to, like,
Yeah.
my child's been diagnosed with ADHD and, basically cue ABA for autism, right? That makes autistic kids normal. We'll save the rant of that, but disgusting. But they basically want to have that for ADHD, and it's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Not your person to do that. If you want your kid to figure out who they are, what they bring to the world, and what they like and don't like in the world, I'm happy to work with them. Other than that, we're not going to work with them.
Yeah.
Me and the parent, not me and the
right. And because so there's so many reasons why I'm not a therapist. I purposefully remain in the coaching world. I know I would get myself in trouble and I would lose my license anyways. So
hey, you know what? My career's still young. That might stop. One day I'm going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person, and I'm just
because I need to feel very comfortable with people firing me without fear of like legal institutions coming after me. Because for me, if I'm working with an adolescent and their home life can't receive who they are, I have had to learn the hard way that I have not necessarily made anything better by waking that child to the fact that their home life is worse than they thought it was. I have had to learn many lessons the hard way of, here's my kid, fix them. And I'm all about the kid, and the kid takes their real self home, and it is worse. And I still get fired, and now that kid doesn't have me anymore.
Right.
The one person who saw them, the one person that understood them, they don't have me anymore. And so I am not trying to say this about anybody else. Anybody else can practice however they want. But for me, if a parent comes to me, the parent is the one who's taking time to work first, because it is often the parent who can be the most impactful in the improvement in the child's well-being, because an hour with me once a week can only do so much. The rest of the time at home is generally with the parent or the caregiver. So they're the people that really need, in my opinion, the information, the skills, all of that, to be able to really see and understand their child and respond in a way that is going to be useful for both parent and child. The parent has to be okay too. And I think that's one of the things I didn't understand bringing up my own. I kept thinking, if my kids are okay, I'm okay. And as a neurodivergent parent, I've started to learn that no, there's stuff that's just about me. It's relative to my kids. It really is just about me, and nothing my kids are going to do is going to change the me that came to the party. I don't know. You can say a thing if you want to about that.
I think it's hard with parents because, one, when they look up ADHD and autism, one of the things you see is the extreme genetic factor that is a part of it. And most people don't want to admit that they have a flawed gene, or, well, I didn't do that to my kid. And then, you have your session with the kid and the parents are like, well, we all sometimes want to storm through and, hit things and throw things. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, if you have that urge, why are you telling your child they're wrong? Like, yes, they should not break things and harm people and do things, right? But you can create a space where they can go outside and throw stuff and they can do things that get that out in a safe way, in a controlled manner so that no one is hurt, including themselves. And I get very frustrated. And I agree with you. I think the hardest part for me was I had a teen one time who finally was comfortable having a meltdown in front of me. And it was again, the unmasking process. I don't take it for granted. I find it beautiful. I get excited. And yes, sometimes when clients are having meltdowns, I have to sit there and actively not smile because I get so excited and I'm just like, this is so cool. Like, yes, have your meltdown. And I'm going to sit here and I'm ready. Like, I can receive it. And the scary part is then knowing that they either have to mask when you are no longer working with them and fired by the parent. And the other option is they are having meltdowns because it is easier to have, meltdowns in front of people after a couple times. And how's that being received and what's happening and what messaging is happening after that. So it is really hard. And it's hard to explain to parents, like, you're having that urge, then we can talk about that because that's probably a contributing factor to why your child was here, right? Like, we're not going to shame something that is just an internal drive, especially with ADHD, the rage factor. I mean, we have to figure out ways to get that out of our bodies. There has to be a release point. There has to be something. I talk a lot with my clients about like tattoos and piercings, and I have tattoos and piercings. I find them, one, to be beautiful, but two, it is a release point, right? If you have a ton of tension in your body and you're really stressed and you go and you get a tattoo or a piercing, like, that physically releases it. I feel better after. I feel like a weight was lifted out of my body afterwards. And now I have a beautiful piece of art that I get to look at in place of that, right? Like, I told somebody I have a story for every single tattoo and piercing, and they were like, really? It's like, yeah, each one has a very important memory for me and like a very distinctive reason that I got it. And I call it socially acceptable self-harm, right? And that's where a lot of people then are like, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't get them, right? And I'm like, no, I'm going to get them. And I tell my clients, like, I get them. I mean, if you get one, definitely tell me because there's a reason you got it and we're going to talk about it. But like, yeah, do what you got to do. Like, our bodies process differently. We process differently. And that's really hard for a lot of people to understand. Same with like restriction, right? A lot of people are just like, oh, well, the person's like doing it to themselves or XYZ, right? But when you start the refeeding process, their sensory awareness is increased. That's one example of a litany of other things, but that's hard, right? Being more aware of your body, being more aware of your thoughts, all these different things, it's exhausting. It is emotional. And there's not a lot of release points out there. There's not a lot of ways to get it out of your body. And I do think that parents hinder that frequently out of pride. There's really no other reason.
Yeah, okay, so we've gone over time and I want to keep talking to you and we could talk forever. And I hate to sort of leave the parenting conversation with so many other places we could go, but I guess the last thing I'd like to ask you is if you could talk to other therapists. Neurodivergence is not enough of a part of the training for therapists, if at all. And if it is taught, it's often taught in an unfortunate way that is not up to current standards in the scientific evidence. So we have a lot of therapists out there that really want to do good stuff.
A lot of harm.
If there's something that you can sort of think about, and I realize I'm putting you on the spot for this, but if there's something you can think of that, like, okay, therapists out there, this is a thing you really need to know, what would you tell them?
Oh, I've been primed and ready for this. This is
All right.
the internal rage conversations that you have. Yeah, this is my number one rage conversation with myself. Just ask clients what their intention is. That's my number one thing. I think that, you know, what I've learned just through my career so far is that a lot of people will assign intention, or they will assume that they are qualified to work with anyone, or they will assume that they can specialize in a lot of different things. So I guess the first one is, don't be afraid to refer out. That doesn't mean you're a bad therapist. It actually means you're a phenomenal one. Two, ask clients what their intention is. You talked about the title of your book. That's going to be mine if I ever actually have the executive functioning to do that. My tagline, I ask that probably 85,000 times a day, because I can't assume that, and neurotypicals think they can. So refer out, ask people what their intention is, and don't assume that emotion is negative. So if a client is telling you, you hurt my feelings, that's powerful in the neurodivergent world. That means that you earn trust. You were receptive previously to all the tests that led your client to telling you that you hurt their feelings. I mean, there is a whole method behind how most neurodivergent people learn that they can't express themselves to somebody, and then they learn to stop because they are shut down by therapists and providers for doing so, and told that it isn't about the therapist. It's still not about you. It is still about the client saying that their feelings were hurt. So I think a lot of it is really just take it away from you. The client is their best spokesperson, and just listen and be receptive and ask them questions and ask them their intention, and just stop assuming.
I love that. And thank you for sharing it. The assuming part. If I tell you a hard thing, please don't assume that I'm telling you so that you can tell me how to fix it. I think a lot of neurodivergent people have a lot of self-awareness. We can't always put it into words that make sense to anybody else. We actually do have a lot of self-awareness. And often what we need is a safe space to get what's in here out. Just like you were talking about with the rage. We need a safe space to get what's in here out, whether it's words or feelings or physical movement or whatever. And therapy is supposed to be that safe space. So if you assume I'm telling you a thing so that you can then fix me, I may not be able to tell you, no, didn't want that. I really wanted you to just hear me.
Yeah.
You know, or the other side where the therapist feels like their only job is to sit and listen. And the neurodivergent person really needs feedback. I need you to say a thing. Well, that's not my job. And then why am I here? Because I can talk to the walls and they say nothing back to me too. Right?
A colleague asked that a client asked for examples of something and they didn't feel comfortable giving examples. And I just looked at them and I was like, then I can almost promise you, if somebody is asking you for examples and you don't give them, they're not going to do whatever you ask them to do. And then they were just blown away when the client didn't do what they asked them to do. And I'm like, they didn't know what to do. You literally just basically said, go do this thing. They said, I can't, I don't know how. And then you said, figure it out. I'm not going to try and figure it out. That was a foreign language to me.
Yes, and figuring it out. I meet all the criteria of an exceptionally intelligent person. And if you say, come here, I don't know what you mean.
How close?
How
Yeah. I can hear you from here if I can hear you say come here, so I need you to be very specific.
Well,
Are you trying to whisper? Because I'm not even gonna hear you if you whisper in my ear. So we're a lot of
yeah.
time.
Why am I coming there? How close would you like me to stand? Do I stand sideways to you, facing you? Are we being secretive? Are we right? Like all of the questions that go through my head. And so I may come here, but I'm so many versions of uncomfortable.
It's gonna be really slow and like hoping that you're gonna give me clues along the way of where I'm supposed to go.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, those little things are the ways if you're a therapist or a physician or a teacher or right, those are the things that can let you know, oh, I wonder if I'm dealing with a neurodivergent person. They asked why.
Oh God, don't even give me sense. We'll go so far over if we talk about the why. That
The
we're
why component.
in to therapists. Like if you're in school, they tell you not to ask a client why. You're supposed to ask it in different ways because why is aggressive. I'm like, why is not aggressive? When a client asks me why, I'm like, oh, I can totally walk you through my thought process. And here you go. And this is why I found what you just said exceedingly annoying, right? Like I'll walk a client through why I think that something they said or did was annoying. Like I'm not going to lie about it. Why is a great question. It's basically what's your intention wrapped up in one word.
Yeah. And we ask it or we don't because it's been beaten out of us, right?
Well, not well by most, I ask why when I actually know why, but I want them to repeat themselves just to make sure that I'm absolutely certain that I remember why correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is good. I like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If I say one more thing, we're gonna go for another hour or two, and there are Dino Nuggies waiting for you. And if we, I want my brain animated.
I would be very afraid of mine being animated, but yes.
Because like I want to animate like you sitting in the chair.
Yeah.
With like some part of your being coming out of you and going to eat chicken nuggies, right? It did that like 3 minutes into our conversation. It left to go eat chicken nuggies, but it's very frustrated out there because it needs your body to come with. I can't pick them up. I can't even put them in the toaster oven. Like you need to bring the body, but that part of your mind is out there staring in the freezer, looking at the chicken nuggies, wondering why the body has not shown up yet.
Yeah.
And I want to animate that because I feel like animating our brains would help so much explain to the rest of the world what is going on.
Yeah.
So it's part of my plan. I'm just looking for the right animator because I need the person who doesn't need all of my words.
So you need a neurodivergent animator.
Right. I need a neurodivergent animator that's wired like me so that I've found musicians like that every once in a while. Music is in my background. And every once in a while, I'd find the musician where I'd be like, I kind of want to do like, da, da, da. And they'd be like, oh yeah, you mean like, da, da, da. Like, yes, that. I wanted to do that, but I didn't. Like, I can't play the guitar. I couldn't do that. But all I had to say was like 2 notes and make a face. And they've got like the whole piece coming out of their fingers. That's what I need, but in an animator.
Well, maybe that'll happen.
Maybe it'll happen. I've spoken it out to the universe. Intentionality, man.
It's my favorite word. I'm going to go intentionally eat some Dino Nuggies.
Dino Nuggies, man. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And we will talk again soon.
Yes.